Welcome to Last Neanderthals podcast. My name is Khushal Yusufzai.
And my name is Wali Khan. You may not know us yet, but that doesn't really matter. All you need to know is we are the Last Neanderthals. We are dedicated to having interesting and engaging conversations with individuals who have a lot of experience and an immense amount of knowledge. We hope to learn from these people and grow as human beings. We want you to listen and grow with us too. So come along the journey and evolve with us.
In today's episode, we spoke to the branding expert Matt Swain. Matt teaches us about how he signs 8-figure clients and how to make a personal brand online. He also spoke about breaking away from your old self and how the body can store trauma. We had conversation about many fascinating topics, and we hope you find this conversation as useful as we did. Thank you so much for listening.
I had a lot of big dreams. I wanted to be a millionaire. But the thing is, during that time in the finance world, I lost that vision. Doing what I do now is my dream on my terms.
You've signed 8-figure CEOs. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm really feeling those butterfly nerves before doing something big. You have to let the body feel that. You're imagining coming off and everybody applauding. Your body will start to feel confident. I think that the really successful people on socials, they build an in-person career alongside the social media presence. And they use their social media presence to unlock opportunities in the real world.
What would you want written on your tombstone? Do you have some kind of ritual before you do like your speaking events to get into that zone?
I like to listen to music. I tend to fast. I don't like watching any of the other speakers, so I tend to like go out the room and do my own thing. I just have my own chats, wander around. Like I won't watch on stage before. I don't know. I do a lot of visualization before, like which is the body stuff, which is what we can go into, where you basically imagine yourself speaking. And you'll feel nervous and you'll start to feel butterflies if you imagine yourself speaking. And then you basically recondition the body where you go like you accept the nervous feelings and you replace them with like confidence, and you imagine yourself feeling confident whilst imagining yourself speaking. And you program the body into like when it's in that moment, instead of defaulting to nerves, you kind of train it to default to confidence.
Wow.
Have you managed to do that successfully?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps. I don't know how much. But like, if you imagine it, you will be like when I'm lying in bed the night before, I imagine speaking and I naturally feel nervous, like most people do. And then you just like breathe in and you feel the nerves, and then you try and replace it with confidence.
I had that kind of recently. So I'm doing a boxing fight soon.
Yeah.
And I was in a lecture and I just dozed off a little bit, and I started thinking about my actual fight. And then when I got back in the room, I noticed my heart was like actually like beating quite fast. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. And like, if you imagine that the night before, your body will have the same effect. It will feel nervous. You'll actually feel your heart racing whilst you're in bed the night before. If you really picture the experience. And so your body's almost living the experience in the future. And that's where like, if you then start to, calm yourself, you see yourself throwing the punches, you see yourself winning, you feel, you really kind of see and feel that, you can then take that heart beating nerves and to convert it into kind of, foreseen confidence that can help you win.
So how do you go about practicing it? Like, is it like meditation, when you lose attention from the breath, you come back to the breath? Like, how does that work?
So for me, it's about feeling it in the body. Like, a lot of people will think the thoughts, but they will not let their body feel things. They'll like they'll stop their body from really feeling that emotion, really feeling that heart pounding, really feeling those butterfly nerves before doing something big. And you have to let the body feel that, and then notice like my body's feeling nervous, and then start to put more confident feelings into the body. That deep breath, you imagining like, kind of having a proud chest, you imagining speaking and it going really well, you imagining coming off and everybody applauding, and your body will start to feel confident as if it's actually had the experience. And that's where you get all of the reprogramming in the body. You get rid of all of that emotional trauma, and you start to become a more confident vessel. It's not just about your mind, but your body feels what your mind thinks.
Could it be a trap though? For example, sometimes I daydream, right? Like, where I like visualize positive things, but then I get the dopamine hits from like thinking about the thing, but then I actually haven't done the thing, and then I can slack off with work. And then how does one go about dealing with that? Can that happen?
I guess so. I mainly think about visualization for big events where like there's a lot of emotional stuff. Like there's, going and doing a workout or a bit of deep work. It doesn't bring up quite the same emotions, so it can have less effect. But yeah, like it's still important to take action. Like you still have to do all of the right things, but at least you're training your body to align to how you're thinking, basically.
And I guess these are events that you've already got in place. So it's not like you daydreaming like, oh, in 10 years, I'm going to be a billionaire or something like that.
Yeah.
It's an event that you're going to be speaking at that you visualize.
It is. And so it's much more intentional and it's much more specific as well. Like it's like, I know this is happening, and in order for it to go well, I can follow this process and it will end up going better. Yeah, it's not about like manifesting or anything like that. It's hard because you start to say this stuff and people presume it's all of this kind of manifestation, law of attraction stuff, and it's not. It's a much more scientific kind of experience in the body than it is about thinking different thoughts and expecting something great to happen. It's really intentionally reprogramming the body to feel what you want it to feel instead of surrendering it to the experience itself. So it's like, I want to feel confidence, and then it's trying to program your body to feel that.
I guess that exposure is really important as well, just to that feeling, because it's like anything else in life. The more you go through something, the more used to it you get. So even if you can't like readjust that to confidence, if you just feel those nerves and you feel them again and again and again, eventually when you're on stage, surely you'll just be used to it.
Yeah, so I think like the visualization stuff is hard to start with. It's like, what do you mean like think confident thoughts and then feel that in the body? And that's why you have to really surrender and try and get your body to tap into the feeling side, because we're just so good at shutting off the feelings. Like we're pretty much just minds walking around, whereas what we need to be is minds connected to bodies. And so a lot of people talk about, mental health, and they talk about, mindset, but they don't talk about the body aspect. And for me, all the gains come into the body. And so it's not about thinking, it's about feeling. And that's like, and it's not about the mind, it's about the body.
So we spoke about like trauma can be trapped in the physical. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So like if you imagine, like one of my friends said something good to me the other day, which illustrates this quite well. Like, imagine you're like sat at work and somebody like you get some, Slack message or Skype message from your boss, and you feel this instant jolt in your heart where it's like, what is it? Like, am I going to have to stay late? Or like you start playing all these thoughts, right? And you can feel your body change. There are actually different chemicals going on in the body. It's changing your biology. You've got a lot of cortisol going on. And so, you experience like your body is tensing up just when that happens. And a lot of us have these cues in our life all the time. Maybe it's, a relationship, or maybe it's an object in your house, or maybe you walk past your old school and you get these instant feelings which put you into a suppressed state where you feel tense, your heart's racing. And it's all about realizing that this is going on, and that like certain cues, and like people have it on socials where like they'll see, Instagram story from someone, and it will make them feel this like, I should be doing that, this is annoying. And you can kind of feel your whole body get suppressed in that moment, especially if you really start to lean into that emotion and let yourself feel it. And so it's about recognizing that your environment, the people you're around, are giving you cues, and you're responding in a certain way, not just mentally, but emotionally too. And so like, I would just encourage everyone, like the next time that they have a similar experience to like one I've mentioned, that they really look at what's going on in their body, and that they'll feel something. And that's what you want to change.
And allowing that to feel, like feeling it, even if it's a negative feeling, embracing it.
Feeling it, but then reprogramming it. So it's like, it's, really it's can sometimes mean that you have to make some big choices. You have to move away from, certain people, or move away from certain objects or certain environments which build this cue. You might have to leave a relationship, you might have to leave a place of work because, every time you walk through the doors there, you feel this suppressed state, and you're then living your whole day through that suppressed state. And so you can't actually live up to your potential. You can't perform your best work. And so, I think that the more that people start to realize this, the more that they will have to make some uncomfortable decisions. But when they do, they'll find that they can open up to the world, they can connect to this quantum field, and that they can actually move forwards in life with quite a lot of ease because they're living in this heightened state of emotion, of gratitude, of, acceptance, of a healthy, wealthy to kind of mindset. And that's where you can start to see some real gains in life.
What if it's more ingrained? So what if it's not something like, just your place of work? What if it was something that happened in your childhood that stayed with you throughout and is very difficult for you to get rid of?
Yeah, I think that can often be the case for a lot of people. I would say that there are often little cues which will take them back there into that place. So this is where your body is actually taking you back to the emotional state you were in as a kid when that was actually happening. And so you're reliving this moment over and over again. And that's why it's so hard for anybody to change or get different outcomes in life, because they're literally living as their 6-year-old self that got bullied in the playground. But there are probably environmental cues which are bringing that experience up. Every time somebody says this to them, or, every time this word is mentioned or this place. And so half of it is changing your environment to get different cues, to then get different actions and different emotional responses. But it takes a lot of time to work through, for sure. And I think that the really successful people have worked through all of that trauma in their body, and they're very accepting of the past and where they've got to now. And that allows them to go into the future and chase their big dreams, and to not have so much, emotional kind of baggage basically holding them back into this suppressed state. You really want, if you're living in an elevated state, suddenly everything becomes so much easier. Signing the deal, you don't have to overthink it and stress about it and have to grind your way through. Suddenly you just turn up and you just are and you become, and then the deal comes to you. And so, yeah.
Have you managed to overcome any cues in your own life?
Okay. Yeah. So, the way that I see it is that you almost have to break free from this old version of yourself to create this new version. And a lot of people have this intent, say, of creating this new version for the new version of their life, this new version of themselves. But they often get pulled back into the familiar past, the old people, old habits, etc. And so they really struggle to get any new outcomes because they keep shifting back to the old self. And so, I would say that in November of 2022, I went through this really kind of painful experience. And out of that, I realized that I needed to create a new self. And in order to do that, I had to break free from my old self. And so that meant changing my friendship group. It meant going sober. It also meant, stop going to bars. It meant creating new habits, eating really clean. And, I feel that even now there are things that are trying to pull me back to the old version, temptations, right? You walk past a bar on a Friday night and you think, maybe I should be there. Or, you see, an old friend pop up on Instagram and you're like, oh, maybe we should go catch up. And it's trying to continue to resist going back to the old self and trying to move closer and closer to the new self.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience as well. So basically when there was the attack on my sister, right? There was a couple months later, initially there was a lot of support for her in the country. Everyone was praying for her. Then a couple months down the line, there were conspiracy theories about how we faked it. It's drama. It's all fake. And, we are Western agents, all crazy stuff, right? So then couple months, about 6 months ago, I had, a couple of my TikToks went viral. And all of that stuff, the messages, some hate comments were very similar to that, to what people were saying back. And I literally felt like that my sister was attacked a couple of days ago. Literally, even though it had been like 8-9 years since, the body feeling was so much similar to when we were going through that trauma that I thought I was reliving it all. And that resonates with me when you say you feel it physically. It takes you back to your old self. And what helped me was actually then just being honest with my friends, right? I just told my friend about all of this, and then that allowed me to feel it. So what you are saying, the message you are giving, is definitely a very useful one, and has helped me a lot in my life as well.
Nice, yeah. And I think that there could even be cues like, and I imagine a lot of people also have this of like, Instagram comments or like TikTok comments. And sometimes like even when you go to check the comments or you refresh on your feed or something like that, again, it takes you back into that moment. And so you can end up with this cue of like, not wanting to go check your comments, or when you do, that it then takes you back. Like, you've got a lot of kind of like painful associations with that action. And, even though it happened in the past, every time you check your comments, it could be a cue that's taken you back there. And so it's trying to work around that. And again, trying to like reprogram, trying to think of your comments as a really positive place, and trying to, overcome that cue and feeling in the body.
One thing I want to ask about is you being sober now, because I see a lot of people have shifted towards sobriety. Obviously, you told us that yours was for health reasons, but what has your life been like being sober?
Yeah, being sober was one of two of the best decisions I made in 2023. I don't think I'd be where I am now if I hadn't gone sober. And it's one of those things where it's keeps reinforcing itself. Like whenever I stop drinking, my life gets better. I've no interest in drinking again, because if I do, again, that could take me back to the old self, and my new self is having way better life outcomes. But the thing with going sober is it's not actually cutting out the drink that has the big difference. For me, if you go sober and you cut out your drink and you still live the same life, then it's not worked. Something's gone wrong there. Like when you go sober, you see reality so much clearer. You haven't got this kind of slowly mind-numbing drug that you go to every weekend. And so you're forced to confront a lot of painful decisions in your life about what you're doing, how you're spending your time, the kind of outcomes that you're getting. And by seeing reality much clearer, you start to make some really different choices. And for me, it was not going to the pub, not going to the bar, and changing that activity up that then changed the people I was around. It changed, my focus on the business was much greater. And so it wasn't so much the stopping drinking, it was all of the activities associated with stopping drinking that really changed everything. And so now you don't even catch me in a pub or a bar, and sure, like I could go there and drink a non-alcoholic drink, but that for me defeats the point of going sober. Going sober should cause your life to change in more ways than just stopping drinking.
That makes sense. What about if someone doesn't do the going out and stuff, they stop that, but then every night they're drinking a bit of alcohol? Do you think that's a bad idea as well, or no?
Yeah, because I think a lot of people will go, oh, like just have one a week, or I just have it every so often. But it's that, if you can always have that drink, you can just delay making that hard decision. I just think I see a lot of people that still drink, and I can just see them delaying the hard decisions. Like when you decide to stop drinking, you're really forced to confront a lot of pain that you would have previously subconsciously drunk away without even maybe realizing it. But like, people drink away their pain, right? It's an escape. And it was an escape for me. And so even a little bit of drink for me destroys the process. Like doing dry January, it doesn't give you enough time for you to make those painful decisions, right? You still, sure, spend a couple of weekends, on a Saturday night doing something different, but then you go straight back into those old patterns. With the old patterns, you take the same actions, you get the same outcomes. And so you should always be looking to make new choices with different outcomes, and really lean into that change. Like the change is a good thing.
And most people as well, when they do dry January, then the 1st of February, they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna finally drink all of this." I've never drank alcohol in my life, so it's always been really fascinating to me that like just people do that to themselves. It seems like you're just poisoning yourself on purpose. So this shift towards sobriety, I think, is quite a positive.
A very
thing.
positive one, yeah.
Yeah, and it's weird because it really is like when I had the kind of health challenges, you know, it was really clear that I was poisoning my body. Like, you know, I couldn't eat like 24 hours after I'd drunk. You know, I'd often throw up, my body kind of just rejecting the substance. And yet like there's still this really weird culture where if you leave a bit of drink, you know, like, you know, people are like, what are you doing? Like, you know, you finish your drink, as it were. And it really is like poison. But like that being said, drinking was a big part of my life. And I think that, you know, for me, I needed to have the right time to make that change. And one of the other things I often say is that like, I made the change in my body as well. So I think a lot of people have the intention of going sober, but the problem is that they make that decision with their mind, and your mind can play lots of tricks on you. You know, you can be in a bar, you know, 11 p.m. and you're like, just one. And your mind will go, well, that doesn't seem that bad, right? Just one. Like it seems fairly like sensible decision. And so you can then go back into the old patterns because you've made the decision with your mind. Whereas when you make the decision with your body, you go, me as a person, as a whole being, feels better without drinking alcohol. And so, you know, you then make the decisions to please your body, and your body knows it doesn't want to drink. And so I'm not tempted in the slightest by alcohol. And that's because I've made the decision with my body. There's nothing my mind can say that can overcome this idea of wanting to drink. And so I think that we should also make more decisions with our body, and that really your body is really the master. And it's the mind that can play tricks, right? You can go into the chimp part of the brain, and that's where all of the problems lie. Whereas if you make the decision with your body, your chimp brain can't argue in the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's such a profound idea, you know. The fact like you need to, like if you're more in touch with your body, you're not just thinking for your mind, so that hijack in your mind can't manipulate you because you're so in touch with your body, and you know your body doesn't want that, and there's nothing that your mind can say.
Yeah.
That's very profound.
You know, if people ask themselves like the question of, what do you feel when you have a drink? And they'll often ask this question, and I used to do this a lot, where you say like, oh, I think it does this to me, or I think it does that to me. And you basically start like almost looking at it from like a third person perspective of, this is what I think it's doing to me. And instead it's about like, what do you feel? And it's like, you should answer the question with, I feel what when drinking, and starting to go on like, maybe you feel more confident, but maybe you feel less healthy. Maybe you feel distracted. And it's starting to use the terms like I feel instead of I think. And that moves you from the mind down into the body. And you'll find that your natural way of talking about things, because we're so big on the mind and less on the body, we'll talk about thinking so much. Like, I think this, I think that, this is why it's a good idea. And that's all like the brain rationalizing. Whereas you'll get a much more clear and truthful answer from the body that will feel and really resonate with you, compared to like what your mind can think up. Your mind's so clever, it can get around anything, but your body has the truth. So yes, if you switch from like I'm thinking to I'm feeling, I think you can start to make a lot of those kind of body shifts that we've been talking about.
That's such an interesting way to think about it. But speaking about making hard decisions, so when you decided to go full time into this type of content creation world, you quit your job. What was that like?
So you were in finance, right?
Yeah. So at 22, I was like, leading a team of 7 people at a big kind of corporate firm. It was like the pinnacle of success that you're told to strive towards. I had brand new Audi A3. I had a gold Amex card. I was going to flown to New York to work. Everyone was like, wow. And yet I felt trapped there, completely trapped. And so, yeah, I decided to take the risk and leave to pursue. I wasn't sure exactly what, but I knew I wanted to be more creative. So yeah, it was a tough decision, but it felt right. It felt right to make.
Well, did you receive any backlash from friends and family?
Yeah, and I think like there's a lot of people that feel trapped like I did, and the resistance to change is so high. Like it's amazing that when you have this idea that you want to quit and pursue your own thing, how much negativity and kind of like challenge there is in actually making that decision. Because it's one thing to kind of go like, I want to do something else. And it's another thing to say, I'm going to take the leap and do it. And so, yeah, there's a lot of resistance. And I think I managed to really tune into my deepest instincts beyond, the kind of societal view and my parents' view and what people around me were saying, and tune into like what I wanted and my instinct of what was right. And that allowed me to make the decision quite peacefully in the end. But like, I'm still shocked at how much resistance there was. And for a long time, you are worse off, right? You leave this big fancy corporate job and suddenly you're kind of, not doing that. And it takes time to build that dream life that you had in mind.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think that one of the hardest thing in life is change, because not only do you have to fight your old self, like you said earlier on, and it feels like there's a lot of like uncomfortable emotions involved, like especially let's say you go into the content creation side, if it's like someone who wants to start YouTube, and not only do you have to like adopt this new identity almost, but it's also about the other people. They feel weird about it. Oh, my friend is now a YouTuber, like how is that going to reflect on me? So they might even have positive intentions. Some people could be jealous, right? Where let's say you changing, you choosing a very like successful and good path, and they were like, oh, now do I have to change my behavior with him? So like change is such a difficult thing. Like it comes with so many layers of challenges that we don't anticipate. So how have you become comfortable with change in your life?
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time you're not the thing before you start out. Like you're not the YouTuber when you start out. You're not the podcaster when you start out. And and so like, you really have to work hard to become that thing, as it were. And you really have to like tune into that vision. So like even me recently, like I really wanted to get into the speaking space. I found that like, sure, it's nice having an online audience, but I wanted to have that in-person connection. But to start with, I'm not a speaker. And slowly but surely, you eventually become a speaker, where like now I have people coming to me all the time, looking to book gigs and, looking to who see me as a speaker. And they just presume that was always the case, that I was always the speaker. And it's like, no, I had to start from square zero and slowly build up the fact that I was a speaker, and I've made that dream that I had a reality. And so, it really is tough at the start when you're on square zero. You want to be the thing, you want to have the new life, but you don't have it yet. And you've got a lot of resistance, challenges, and a lot of hustle and hard work to actually make that thing happen.
And it's just having big goals as well. Sometimes it can even be difficult to like talk about them in front of other people. Like, I don't know, even myself, like I don't tend to tell people my goals. I kind of keep them to myself because society just seems to not accept it. It's like you're meant to follow this path, not the path least traveled, even though that's where the greatest things lie, the things that you could never imagine. They are on this path where everyone just wants you to be like a factory worker, go to school, get your grades, get a job, retire at 60 and then finished.
Yeah. And it's like going back to that no speaker to a speaker. Like no one around you has been on that journey or knows what that journey looks like. And so to them, it's this really like alien idea. And, that's where a lot of the challenge and your vision comes in, where it's like, I really believe that I can make this work. Nobody sees it yet, but I believe I can make it work. And that vision that you have of that you can be different and that you can go after the big goal is everything. And that's like the thing that a lot of people suppress or they feel unworthy of it, or they've lost that dream. And that's a shame, because society has told them that they shouldn't have that dream or they shouldn't have that goal. But I think if you have that goal, that's everything. Like, that's all you need. That's the difference between you and everybody else, is just actually having that vision, that crazy idea, and you believe you can make it work.
Did you always have that sort of vision or dream, or was there a point that it just came to you?
Yeah, so like back when I was in the finance world, like when I was 18, I had a lot of big dreams. Like I wanted to be a millionaire and all of the kind of typical ideas. And so even at like 16, 17, I was very like, had lots of big ambitions. That's why I went into a big corporate firm at 18 and kind of worked my way up the ladder a bit. But the thing is, during that time in the finance world, I lost that vision. I'd become so far from who I actually was. I was chasing other people's dreams so much that I lost track of my own. And then when that happened, I went through a really tough period where, I felt like I wasn't living aligned to who I was. It was lots of kind of mental battles. And since I then refound that dream in what I'm doing now, and since doing what I do now, it's so easy to stay motivated, to keep going, and to like make it happen, because it's my dream on my terms. And I think that sometimes you can lose track of it. I certainly did. But like when you're on that path, like it's a magic feeling.
How do you stay motivated though when you have to get that motivation from yourself? Because I know a lot of people struggle with this. When they don't have someone else telling them what to do, they can just lie in bed all day and do nothing.
Especially in this industry, because you need to be your own boss, right? In content creation, podcasting, all of these things. So yeah, like how do you do it?
It's hard, and there's a lot of hard work as well. Like it's not an easy thing to do. Like you can't just wake up and wave some wand and it's there, right? Like it does require like sacrifice and hard work. I think like firstly realizing that like you can make your dreams happen. It does put the force back on you. And like I realize now that there's not much in the outside world that can change my life. A lot of it's internally on me. And so I'm always trying to lean into that, improve, do the work that I need to, because I know that I have the power to change my life. And that's like, it sounds like it's said a lot, but until you have that really deep realization yourself, where you're like, wow, like it's just down to me. Like if I just do this, I can make it happen. That's super motivating. And so like you want to feel like the power's in your hands. And I think a lot of people give away their power to an algorithm or to, a boss or to, a family member or a relationship. And you want to hold that power firmly in your hands. I've also found that since growing the team out, so we're a team of 9 now, it's not just me anymore. And when I wake up, I know that I've got to support the team, I've got to answer their questions. And I found that it's also way more enjoyable when you have a team around you, when you're working on this goal together, where you're trying to win deals together, where you're trying to deliver great work together. So I found that having a team has boosted my own motivation. And it's not just about me anymore. It's like I have somebody else to wake up for, in a sense.
Do you have like strict deadlines that you give yourself, where like borderline unrealistic, in order to like push yourself more? I know Elon does that. Do you have any system like that in place?
I mean, we do believe in like putting in the reps, and so, we know that a lot of work has to be done and we're prepared to do that. And so it's not just a case of sending like, we try and do a lot of whatever we're doing. So we'll pick an activity like, maybe I want to do more speaking, and then we'll really put in the reps of how to get more speaking and making that happen. And if we're on like a kind of sales drive month where we're looking to push deals, which is what we're doing this month, again, we'll go hard into that. We'll really put in the reps. We'll send in the emails. We'll put out the content. We're going way harder than a lot of other people would. And so I can't remember the original question.
That like, do you guys have like
hard
set deadline?
Yeah. So it's less about the set deadlines and more about like, we're just prepared to put in the reps. We're prepared to do what other people aren't. And we believe that like, that's what's needed to make it happen. and we can't change the outcome, but we can put in the reps to make the outcome more likely.
Do you think you were always a leader? Because now obviously you're leading a team of people, or do you think it was built over time?
I think like partly being a leader is about having the vision. And I think for a long period of time, I wasn't sure exactly on my vision. And I think that I didn't build a team around me at that point. And I think since having a stronger vision, you naturally like bring people on board. It almost just kind of happens. People just kind of come to you and it kind of works itself out. So I think like having a strong vision makes leading a lot easier. And I don't think it's always been in me, because I don't think I had the vision in the past. And since having the vision, the leadership's come with it. If you look at all of the best leaders, they have a super big vision that they're aiming towards. And so we try and have the same with the team as well, where we're like, we know where we're going. It's just a case of putting in the reps and the steps to get there.
What are the 3 best qualities that a leader should have? The 3 most important?
Yeah, I mean, if I focus on like, it's having a really high attention to detail and keeping the bar really high across the team. As things get busier and as your team grows, it's easy to let quality and standards slip from everything. And we care about every single detail, because we know that a piece of content could get 1 million views. Or if we're crafting a kind of outbound message, we know we're going to send that 1,000 times. So we want to make sure it's right. And so keeping that standard really high amongst the team is both really hard, because you're just, it's easy to let it slip and be like, whereas we believe in the very best. And so I think being a good leader requires you to make those hard decisions and to hold your standards high and not let them slip for anything, basically.
How do you, let's say if there's one member of the team that's not carrying their slack and they're kind of falling short from that standard, how do you go about, communicating that to them, that you receive it in a positive way, but then there's also action from them?
Yeah, I think it takes like understanding their point of view. Like maybe something's a bit hard for them, with the task, something's missing, maybe you've not trained them quite right. Like often it can be like a simple misunderstanding that's stopping things from getting done. So like having a conversation where you can make sure that they have everything that they need to do that task effectively. Often you do need to just allocate more time to it for them to, train up, for them to, start to, like often it can also be a case of speed, right? Like again, like we want to move quickly, it's a social space. And so sometimes it's a case of like, just needing to put in more reps to increase the speed of the task. But it's also like inhibiting that yourself. It's like your team will mirror you. And so if you're not demonstrating the right behaviors, then nobody in the team will. And so I pick up on lots of small details. I care about the small details myself. The team see that and they mirror that. One of the other things is like quick replies. So we're a big believer in like, we have 24/7 kind of client contact. They can contact us at any time and we'll respond. And in the social space, we believe responsiveness is key. So if a client has a problem, like, on the train up here, I'm straight back to them, even though it's a Sunday. And so, again, I want the team to have a quick response as well. And that means that you have to reply to their messages quickly and respond to their, kind of questions or queries quickly. And as a result, they'll feed that back to you and they'll start replying to you quickly. And so now our whole team naturally want to work, kind of like, across the whole week. And, they just really believe they're just bought into the kind of responsiveness in the culture. And so you have to mirror the behaviors that you want your team to exhibit. And they're looking at you way more closely than you realize. And if you let things slip, if you take 24 hours to respond, they'll just do the same.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we have found as well.
Working on the hard way, to be honest.
What's the story there?
I think it's just little things, like over time, like you said, the quality slips when you slip yourself. So when we stop responding in time, then the people we're trying to work for us, they stop responding. Like if we've got someone editing a podcast, if we take 2-3 hours to respond to them, then we see that they take 2-3 hours to respond as well. But if we respond instantly, then they respond instantly. If we like are lazy, makes them lazier as well. So it's all about like setting that standard yourself for everyone else to like aim for and follow.
Another thing that, you know, that I've learned is that if sometimes you could be doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but your team doesn't see it. So you got to keep them in the loop of how much you're doing. Because like there's been a lot of instances where even like with other projects I've worked on, where my work hasn't been seen. So the other people kind of start slacking. But then I'm like, I should keep them looped in, because they might be thinking, oh, I'm not putting in the work, when I'm like holding myself to high standard. Otherwise, you know, that if you don't communicate it of what kind of moves you're making, let's say if Wali's busy with X, right, and I'm busy with like, let's say, finding guests, and I'm sending all these pitches and all of that stuff, and I'm not helping him communicate with the editors, anything like that, he'll be like, oh, Khushal's slacking, and rightfully so. So I need to keep Wali in the loop that these are my tasks, this is what I'm gonna do. That way, I think there's less chance of that happening.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
Yeah, so like I had a big meeting a couple of weeks ago, and at that meeting we got a picture of us, me and the person I was having the meeting with. Really nice photo. And so what I did was I got a hand printed card with that photo on the front of the card, and said like a thank you note, really kind of like saying how great it was to have the meeting, all of this stuff. Sent a signed copy of my book, and sent that up to the person who I had the meeting with. And like that's the kind of attention to detail and care that we're looking to do, like that kind of personalization. And then I sent that to my manager as well, so that he could see that like care that I was taking, and that real above and beyond attitude that we want to take that level of detail and attention and that kind of 1% into everything that we're doing, into every interaction with clients, into every meeting, and into every piece of content. And so you can start to like, you know, they can start to get an idea of, wow, like this guy really cares, and this guy's going above and beyond, and then they'll exhibit that too. So I think that, yeah, like letting your team know about some of those like behaviors that you're showing that they might not see. Like they didn't see that I was putting together this package for this from to this guy who I had the meeting with. But it's if you think that that's an important value or behavior that you're showing there, then you definitely want to let the team know.
Okay. And so you have been kind of involved in this content creation scene for a while now. And I think there's some studies now which show it's the most like desired job for young kids. Everyone wants to be a YouTuber or an influencer. So if you could give some pieces of advice to anyone watching this who wants to be an influencer or a social media creator, what would you say?
Yeah, it's a good question. I never wanted to be an influencer, or I never wanted to have influence. I never wanted to post on socials. It just kind of happened. And I think like there has to be some deeper impact to it. And so it's not a case of like, how do I become famous, or how do I become popular, or how do I get a following? It's like, what's the message I'm sharing with the world? What impact do I want to have? What legacy am I leaving? Those are much better questions to be asking. And if you struggle to answer those questions, then it might be that you're not ready to start creating content. The second thing is that a lot of people want to be an influencer, but I don't think being an influencer is particularly a good thing to be. And instead, I think it's better to actually look at what you actually want to be. So it could be a model, a musician, a fashion designer, an entrepreneur, a musician. You know, it could be all of these kind of things. Most people actually want to be one of those things, like that, and they see that being an influencer as a vehicle to get there. You know, so they might really want to be a comedian, but they start creating little skits on TikTok to start with, which makes sense. And they start like, you know, building up a following, but really they want to be a comedian. And they spend too much time trying to become an influencer and not enough time looking at becoming the actual thing they want to be. And I think that the really successful people on socials, they build an in-person career where they're doing real things with real people in the real world alongside the social media presence. And they use their social media presence to unlock opportunities in the real world and open doors. And then they use those in-person experiences to create great content. And they then grow their in-person brand and their online brand together. And they become much more successful than an influencer who doesn't have a particularly long shelf life and who struggles to monetize their audience. And instead, they become an industry leader in the domain they want to be in and actually can make a 20-long-year career doing it. And so if you take like the comedian, I mean, you can take any of those examples, but you'll see people that, want to be a comedian. Great. They then start creating TikTok skits. Again, that's a great thing to do, but they'll get too distracted by the influencer name and association, and they'll forget about being a true comedian. And so if I was that person, I would be going, sure, how do I build a following? But how do I use that following to get me on live at the Apollo? How do I use that following to get introduced to Ramesh Ranganathan, right? And how do I use that to then get my first gig? And that transition needs to be made from online into the online world. And not enough people do, because they then start to get too married to the numbers. They start caring too much about the algorithm. They care too much about winning a sponsored gig, and they forget about being an actual comedian.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the whole funneling system isn't correct. You should always be funneling people into the real.
Well, so it's like the social media presence isn't the goal. The goal is to be a comedian, and the social media presence is a vehicle to get them to being a comedian. Because, if traditionally you'd have to go and do maybe 1,000 gigs, in bars and pubs before you get your kind of breakout opportunity. Or you might have to do, 1,000 casting roles before you get the big gig. Whereas social media allows you to fast track that, because you can say, well, look, all of these people love this stuff. The people making the decisions can go and look at your portfolio. They don't need to, you don't need to go to 100 gigs for the chance of one person seeing your potential and booking you a bigger gig. You can use social media to fast track that process. But it's not the goal in of itself. And your socials will grow way bigger, and you'll have way more influence when you start doing things in the real world compared to online. Being an online comedian is great, but having a big online following plus being an in-person comedian doing the gigs, those people are going to have the best following, the most loyal influence, and they're actually going to enjoy what they do because they've made that dream the reality. Whereas a lot of people who just have the influence online, they get a bit frustrated because they're not really where they want to be. They have 100k followers, but they can't open the opportunities they want to. And so we help mentor certain creators through that process, where we take their social media presence and take that branding as an influencer and help them become who they actually want to be, and help create in real life opportunities, doing what they actually want to do. But a lot of influencers have never asked that question of what they actually want to do. But when you ask it, you usually see that there's a lot more things, and that sponsored ads and paid partnerships on TikTok is just, they're only looking 6 months ahead, and that's what they're seeing. They're not seeing 5 years out, where it's what are they going to be doing when they're 28? And that's the question to really ask, because then you can build your socials and work backwards from there and build your socials as a kind of roadmap to help get to that end outcome. But most people have no idea where they're going.
I also wanted to ask, what are some of the biggest red flags people should look out for when they're entering this industry? Because we see a lot of drama in the content creation scene. So what have you learned from your experience where you're this person, I might want to be arm's length?
I think kind of going back to what I was saying before, too much online focus and not enough offline focus. You want to see people build their real world skills as much as they build their online skills. And certain people will become so paranoid about editing a 0.35 seconds hook to pull in, and they'll be so focused on the data that they forget to zoom out and actually miss this other skill set that's needed in life to go and create a successful following, which is an in-person brand and actually achieving stuff in the real world that then can be translated online. And so I'd say if you see people that become way too paranoid about an extra few views online and they miss the bigger picture.
So Matt, you have a strong offline presence, not just an online presence. And you've signed 8-figure CEOs and founders. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, so it's funny because I was at this speaking gig on Wednesday, and one of the questions I got asked most was around like, how do you end up signing these 8-figure kind of founders and CEOs as clients? And I think it is partly that. It's partly that I have the online brand and the offline brand. And what that really does is it builds trust in the marketplace. Like a lot of people online, they just look like they're kids in their bedroom. And that may be the case, but you have to look more, you have to show yourself in person at events. I found the speaking to be incredibly effective at building more trust in the marketplace, where people can see you speaking, they see you as the expert. And I think, a lot of people don't build enough trust that's needed in order to sign these bigger deals with kind of bigger names. And then also you have to really look at your content and go, does your content really attract the right people? So, like if I was posting, like Barbie stuff, for example, that is going to off-put my ideal clients. And so we have to put out stuff that's going to really align and kind of really going to resonate with 8-figure founders and brands. There's this idea of like your positioning in the marketplace. And this word positioning gets there's a lot of discussion around it, but very few people are able to share like what it actually means. And so if we take 3 chocolate bars, for example, okay, like let's say you've got a Morrison Savor bar, you've got a Dairy Milk Cadbury's bar, and then you've got like a Green and Black's luxury kind of bar. Now, in each of those 3 chocolates, the chocolate is going to taste pretty good. Like if we're going to enjoy it, it's going to taste good. But the wrapper around each of those 3 chocolate bars says something very different about the chocolate, right? And the positioning of it. And so in this example, you can think of the chocolate like your content. So everybody focuses on the content, but the content's roughly the same. What really matters is the wrapper around your content. And so for us, we're trying to sign the top premium end of the market. And so I have to make sure that the wrapper around my content, my positioning, my branding, the kind of things that we're talking about, the values we inhibit, look like a Green and Black's wrapper, so that we're positioned in that place in the market. And a lot of people have like, let's say, Morrison Savor branding, but they're trying to sign the premium end of the market, or vice versa. And so like that positioning in the marketplace is crucial. And that's why what you say on socials, the branding, the colors, the photos, absolutely everything you do online is going to build towards a Morrison Savor quality of brand or a Green and Black's quality of brand. And you have to make sure that you're aiming towards the right one. And that's a lot of what we do with clients, where clients, will understand like content, but we say that it's not just the content you post, it's about all of the other things around that content. And that's where we focus.
And you have to be intentional with everything you do. You can't just be like, oh, let me just slap this logo here, slap that color there. Like you have to really have purpose.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask, like, when I'm trying to build my personal brand, right? Like you said, trust is very important, and I want to portray authenticity. I want to be authentic, but then how do I avoid the trap of oversharing? I don't know. Like sometimes people, I feel like I'm just saying a bit too much personal stuff where they may be like, I don't care, or maybe I should stop caring about. Like I don't know. Like how do I find that good balance where I'm authentic, I'm providing value, but usually that involves oversharing because the example I might provide could be very embarrassing, let's say.
I think people in general try and be too authentic, unnecessarily so. I think that your social should be selective. Like you're only sharing a small subset of your life. Whatever you do, you're never going to be able to put your life across because, that's just an impossible idea. So by its very nature, you're being selective by what you post. And that's okay. I think that selectivity is key. And you want your brand to be outcome focused. Like the idea is that you're sharing content to get some kind of outcome. And depending on what you share, the outcome's going to be different. And so it's not losing, I think people lose track of that North Star outcome that they're aiming for, where it's like they want to sign clients, they want to win podcast guests, they want to sell copies of their book, but yet you look at their content and it says something very different. And so you want your content and your outcome to line up. Your brand should be working for you. And a lot of people can be too authentic, overshare too much, and their brand starts working against them. The brand makes it harder to unlock those opportunities. It makes it harder to open those doors with those key decision makers, and it moves them further away from the outcomes that they're actually looking to achieve.
So, as we've mentioned a couple times now, you're involved in this like content creation scene. Who is the nicest person you think you've met through this?
That's a good question. I'll probably say like Liam Payne. Like Liam Payne's one of the biggest names. So we hung out on a podcast recording together, then went to a party up in Manchester together. And just genuinely like very, very nice, like super chill, super casual, really easygoing, and makes you feel super like at home with him as well, like really relaxed. But yeah,
he got some backlash recently, didn't it? Was that Liam Payne when he went on a podcast?
I think in general, like a lot of big names, like there's a lot of big headlines that come out about like they can do something fairly small and people blow it up. I've definitely seen that with him.
Really? Yeah. Have you ever met anyone and you thought, oh, this one I don't know about?
Yeah, where you were like, does not like match what they were trying to portray online. It's just, they're horrible.
You don't have to say a name.
You don't have to say the name.
It's a question that I often ask people of me that I've met online, where I'm like, I think it's really like, I always ask like, do I come across offline how I do online? Because I think it is a really key metric to look at. Like, it's no good if you turn up and people think like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that, as it were. And so I always try and, I'm trying to match up offline and online together, right, with who I am. And I think that like a lot of people that have become successful or become big names have done the same. Like there's smaller names, like we're talking kind of 10K followers on LinkedIn who are in my kind of circles, and you meet them offline and they're just completely different. Like online, they're really opinionated and sassy and, got all the talk, but offline there's nothing. And but I think that like if you were to unlock the bigger rungs of the ladder of the game, I think you have to marry the two up.
How do you scout for talent and potential in this game? Like, what differentiates someone who's got it and just someone who's not got it?
Yeah, the key metric is hustle. So like you can tell when somebody's hustling, they're churning out the videos, they're doing the messages. And that hustle mentality, I think, throughout any aspect of life gets you so far. People really admire the hustle, and it gets you in a lot of doors. It builds a lot of respect that you can struggle to get elsewhere. People see the hustle, they love the hustle. It's a thing I love the most as well. When I see somebody with hustle, they're going to go far. So that's like one aspect, and then two is that like real world aspect. Like, does this person realize that they need to get into the real world and build relationships and add value and have skills that they can offer? And if they realize that, then they're going to be successful on socials usually. But I guess like from a team perspective, it's that attention to detail. Like it's loving the small details. It's paying attention to the 1%. It's looking at things and going, we can make this better. Like that kind of mindset is what you want to look out for from a team perspective.
Yeah, that is the perfect answer, because that's one thing that I've been really big on since this project has started. And it seems like it's really hard to drill that into people, because like to a lot of people, like you tell them like this has to be like this, it has to be done this way, and they'll just, oh, what's he talking about, man? It's not that deep, it's not that serious. It's just a reply to a comment. It's just, it doesn't matter the day you post, like you can post a day late, and like to me it does really frustrate me. So how do you make other people see your vision, or do you just discard those people and get new ones to replace them?
Very good
I
question.
think it is just like you have to demonstrate the behavior really strongly. The more they see it, the more they'll either realize it's not a good fit, or they will become aligned and follow.
Or they'll dissociate and then they've made your life easier, I guess.
Yeah, they'll they'll go and find another opportunity. Because if they if they're not bought into it, it is really annoying to have somebody like, I want you to change this word. This isn't quite right here. And so like people will either love that or they'll hate it, and they'll work their way up the rungs of, your company or, what you're doing, or they'll run away.
So self-improvement is one of the best things a person can start. Which 3 influencers or podcasters would you recommend to a young person watching that's going through a tough time that they should listen to, or someone they should follow in order to improve their life?
Sure. I think Chris Williamson's episode with Jordan Peterson, which he's done several. They recorded an episode in November 2023. If you're willing to get your mind changed, and you're willing to accept some hard truths, that podcast is amazing. It will really challenge your beliefs. It will really get you to think differently about certain core ideas. So fully recommend that one. I'm listening to at the moment Chris Williamson's episode with Joe Dispenza. I think that Joe Dispenza is one of the best the best voices right now in the world. And so I can't recommend Joe Dispenza enough. To start with, you might struggle to listen to him. To start with, it might seem complicated and out of touch. But if you stick with it and you start to see what he tells you through his content in your life, you would just love him even more.
So he's got spirituality content.
Yeah, spirituality mixed with science.
Mixed with science.
Yeah, it's got a very scientific back into it, but it can sometimes feel quite mystical. And I'd say like the third, probably some Alex Hormozy content. He talks about putting in the reps, the importance of, putting in the work. Things are going to be hard. You're going to have to break other people's dreams to create your own. Just a lot of like really good messages to embed on a day-to-day basis. When you're sat there and you're thinking, this is hard, do I want to do this? You're kind of reminded of some important messages that will help push through. So a bit of Alex Hormozy content to keep things moving.
That's a deep one. You have to break other.
I was going to that was my next question. Like, what does he mean by that? Or should we just find out for ourselves?
I mean, when I left the corporate world, right, I had created the dream that everybody else wanted me to live. And I was just living someone else's dream. And when I decided to quit, I had to break everyone's dream in order to find my own. And so I've been through that. And it's one of those things where like, at every point in life, you've probably got to break other people's dreams. If you want to continue to change and evolve and push, then, people's ideas around you have got to shatter so that you can then create the new self, almost like a phoenix rising.
Oh, that's a very positive outlook to it then. Okay.
Yeah, I thought he meant like exploit other people.
Some Machiavellian stuff. Yeah, I was like, that's not Alex Hormozy. He's such a nice guy.
Do you want to ask your last question?
What would you want written on your tombstone?
I'd probably say something like he reached his potential. Like I think that I'd like to think that like wherever I go, whatever I do, that like I've reached that potential. And I think that that a lot of people, that's a hard thing to strive towards. But if I can get there, I'll be happy.
Could you not always say that, there could have been more? How do you reconcile with that?
Yeah. I think deep down.
Scariest thing.
Yeah, I think when you're like pushing yourself. It's like a thing that you're like, I did well there. Like that was good. That was good.
Surely they're gonna write that on your tombstone. Imagine they say he didn't really reach his potential. He almost got there.
He almost got there. It was just maybe one day of workout out.
That's a great answer. I think that's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, it's a very unique answer.
Really?
No, yeah.